You dare to define me on this? He asked in a low, dangerous tone. Tears were streaming down her face now, but she held her ground. If caring for your mother means destroying my own health and sanity, then yes, I have to stand up for myself too. I'm sorry, but this is too much for me. Sabinus stared at her as if seeing a stranger. His jaw worked, and for a moment she thought he might shout or even raise a hand. He looked that enraged, but instead he took a deep breath and snatched his phone from the nightstand. Fine, he said tightly. If you won't cooperate, I'll go to Enugu myself and bring Mama here. We'll talk about this again when I return. Chidera balanced her 3-month-old baby, Soporo, on her hip as she stirred a steaming pot of pepper soup on the stove. The mid-morning sun filtered through the small kitchen window of their 2-bedroom flat in Benin City, casting a warm glow on the tidy space. In the living room, her 2-year-old daughter, Maya, sat surrounded by colorful plastic toys, babbling to herself in the half-formed words of a toddler. It was a typical Saturday morning for the young mother. 3 years into her marriage, Chidera had settled into a daily routine that revolved around her family. Ever since she married Sabinus and moved from her hometown in eastern Nigeria to join him here in Benin City, her life had become a circle of cooking, cleaning, washing clothes, and tending to the children. She smiled softly as she tasted the soup. Just enough salt, a hint of uziza leaves, like her late mother used to add. Cooking always brought back memories of her mother, who had passed away years ago. Now, as a wife and mother herself, she poured all that love and care into her own family. Behind her, the bedroom door creaked open. Sabinus emerged, already dressed in his neatly ironed shirt and trousers. He was preparing to head to work, even on a Saturday, overtime at the finance company where he worked as an analyst. He adjusted the collar of his shirt and glanced at his wristwatch. I'm running late, he muttered. Inago Ruta, she asked in Igbo before switching to English out of habit. You're going to work today? I have some backlog to clear, he replied briskly, picking up his laptop bag from the sofa. Every weekday, he left early for work and returned late. Even on weekends, he sometimes went to the office. It left most of the household responsibilities squarely on Chidera's shoulder, a fact that both of them had simply accepted. Maya spotted her father and tottered over on unsteady legs, clutching a stuffed doll. Dada, she exclaimed, her face lighting up in a big smile. Sabinus managed a smile back and bent to pat his daughter's head gently. Be a good girl, okay? Daddy will be back soon. Chidera turned off the stove and wiped her hands on a dishcloth. She shifted baby Soporo to her other arm and walked over to join them at the door. Your food is ready, she said, nodding toward the pot on the stove, pepper soup and yam. He shook his head, already edging toward the door. No time for that. I will grab something on the way. He paused at the doorway, giving a quick look around as if checking he hadn't forgotten anything. In truth, the house was spotless, beds made, floors swept and mopped, breakfast dishes already washed and put away. The only sounds were the low hum of the ceiling fan and Maya's babbling. As he was about to step out, he noticed a small button missing from his shirt cuff. Frowning, he held out his arm slightly. Ah, Chidera, see my shirt. The button is gone. I'm sorry, maybe it fell off in the wash, she said apologetically. I can sew it back later today. He grunted, already halfway out. Later, he muttered, glancing again at his watch. I have to go now. With that, he left, shutting the door firmly behind him. The latch clicked in place and silence filled the flat again. Chidera stood there for a moment with Soporo in her arms, gazing at the closed door. A soft sigh escaped her lips. She loved her husband, and she knew he worked hard to provide for them. But there were moments she wished he would notice how much she did too. Since the day she gave up her job as an accountant at a bank to focus on raising their children, life had become a different kind of hard work, one that came with no salary or weekends off. She went back to the kitchen and ladled some pepper soup into a bowl, blowing on it to cool before feeding Sapporo a little of the broth with a spoon. The baby cooed and dribbled happily. In the background, Maya was now trying to sing along to a cartoon theme song playing on TV, though she barely knew the words. The corners of Chidera's mouth lifted in a smile at the sound. This was her world. Two small children depending on her for everything, and a husband who, bless him, didn't so much as pick a pin off the floor. In the early days of their marriage, that had bothered her more. She remembered jokingly calling him Oga one day when she was heavily pregnant with Maya and still doing laundry, asking if he could at least help hang the clothes. He had just laughed and kissed her forehead, saying, "Nne, don't worry yourself. It's a woman's work. You know, I can't even iron my own shirt properly." Back then, she let it slide with only a bit of annoyance. She told herself it was temporary. Once the children were a bit older, she might return to work, and maybe he would chip in more then. But with baby number two arriving so soon after the first, those hopes seemed far off. For now, she handled it all, and she took pride in caring for her family, even if it was exhausting. As the morning sun climbed higher, she mentally mapped out her tasks for the rest of the day. Give Maya a bath, change Sapporo's diapers, do a load of laundry, sweep the balcony, prepare lunch, perhaps jollof rice, Maya's favorite, and later think of something to make for dinner. It was a lot, but it was her routine, and she tried to keep a cheerful heart through it all. That evening, as dusk settled and the chorus of cricket began outside, Sabinus returned home from work looking unusually tense. He pushed open the front door and barely acknowledged the delicious aroma of fried plantains and stew that wafted from the kitchen. Typically, he would comment appreciatively on the food or ask about the children, but this time he walked straight to the bedroom to drop his bag. Chidera, who had been feeding Maya a piece of plantain in the dining area, noticed his troubled expression. She gently wiped Maya's greasy little fingers and set the toddler down. "Go and play, my angel," she said softly. The little girl waddled off, and Chidera followed her husband to the bedroom, heart beginning to pound with worry. In the soft yellow light of the bedside lamp, she found Sabino sitting on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees and face buried in his hands. He looked up when she entered, and she could see a storm of concern in his eyes. "Sabinus, what is it? Did something happen at work?" she asked carefully, sitting beside him. Baby Sapporo stared in his crib in the corner, and she cast a quick glance to ensure he was still asleep. He shook his head and sighed deeply. "It's not work. I got a call from home today." "From home? You mean Enugu?" Chidera's mind immediately jumped to his family. Enugu was where Sabino's mother and sisters lived. "Is everything okay?" "My mother," he paused, his voice catching. "Mama's health has gotten worse." "Oh no," Chidera whispered, genuinely concerned. She had a soft spot for Mama, her mother-in-law, even though they weren't extremely close. Mama had been kind to her during visits, and it pained Chidera to hear she was suffering. "What happened?" "She has been bedridden for a while. You know, since the stroke last year. My sister said she isn't improving. In fact, she has gotten so weak she can hardly sit up on her own. And," he swallowed hard, "sometimes Mama doesn't remember people. She has forgotten things, even us, sometimes." Chidera placed a comforting hand on his back. "I'm so sorry." That must be hard for you. What are the doctors saying? He rubbed his eyes. They have tried. At her age, they say it's mostly about care and keeping her comfortable. She's not exactly young anymore. Chidera nodded, feeling sympathy. Mama was in her late 60s and had worked hard all her life. I wish we lived closer so we could visit her more often, she said sincerely. Sabinus fell silent for a moment, then he sat up straighter and looked into her eyes. His voice was low and serious. Actually, I was thinking maybe we should bring Mama here. Here? She wasn't sure if she had right. To Benin City? Yes. To live with us for a while. So she can get proper care, he said. The words coming out in a rush. My sisters have their own families. And they said it's becoming difficult juggling everything. But he gestured around the room. We have space and you are at home to take care of her. It took a few seconds for the full meaning of his words to sink in. When they did, Chidera felt as if the bedroom walls were suddenly closing in on her. She stood up slowly, trying to keep her voice calm. Sabinus, we live in a small two-bedroom flat. Where would Mama stay? And did you say I should look after her? He rose to his feet too, sensing the resistance in her tone. She can take our room for now and we can manage the living room temporarily or figure something out. It's not permanent, just until she's better. Chidera's mouth went dry. She loved Mama, but the idea of becoming a full-time caregiver on top of caring for a newborn and a toddler was overwhelming. I didn't think I can manage that, she said quietly. I mean, Sopori is just 3 months old. Maya is only 2. I barely have time to sit down during the day as it is. You will manage, he said as if it were a simple matter. You are doing a great job with the kids. Adding one more person to care for, it won't be any different. She looked at him in disbelief. Did you really think it was that easy? One more person, Sabinus, your mother is bedridden and very ill. She needs special care, probably diaper changes, help with eating, bathing, everything. You are a woman. You know how to do those things, he replied, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. She's my mother. We can't just leave her in Enugu when we could bring her here. Chidera felt a spark of anger. It wasn't that she lacked compassion. If anything, her heart ached for Mama's condition. But why did it automatically fall on her shoulders to provide her care? What about him? What about his sisters? What about your sisters? She asked, trying to keep her voice even. Ada, Ifoma and Nkechi, they all live closer to her than we do. And they are women too. Why can't they take turns caring for Mama? He frowned, clearly not liking her response. They have been trying, but you know Ada just had a baby as well. Ifoma's job keeps her busy, and Nkechi lives with her family in Port Harcourt. None of them can do it easily. Plus, I'm the only son. It's my responsibility to make sure Mama is okay. Yes, I'm not saying we shouldn't help, she replied, heart pounding harder. Maybe we can contribute to hire a nurse for her in Enugu or find another solution. Bringing her here, Sabinus, I'm exhausted already. I barely sleep because of the baby. How am I supposed to handle another person who needs round-the-clock care? He stepped forward, reaching out as if to take her hand, but she stepped back. A crease of frustration formed in his brow. This is my mother we are talking about. Are you saying you won't take care of her if she's here? Is that it? I'm not saying. I don't think I can do it alone, she shot back, voice trembling with a mix of anger and guilt. If we bring her here, will you help me? Will you take time off work to assist in caring for her, at least sometimes, or hire someone to help? You know my job is demanding, he replied sharply, and hiring a full-time nurse is expensive. Why hire a stranger when you can do it? You are at home all day. At home all day, the word stung. True, she didn't go to an office anymore, but She hardly had a moment of rest. She spread her arms, trying to make him see. I'm working all day, Sabinus. I work long hours than you do. Caring for these kids and this house. It's a 247 job. You come home and you can relax. But my work doesn't end. So what are you saying? That my mother should just be left to suffer because you feel too proud to do more work? His voice was rising now, a rare anger making it quiver. He was usually a calm man, but this was his mother, and clearly it struck a nerve. The accusation felt like a slap. Chidera's eyes welled with sudden tears, partly from frustration and partly from disbelief that he would think her refusal was about pride or laziness. Don't twist my words, Sabinus. I care about Mama, but there has to be another way. The decision is made, he said, crossing his arms. I have the final say in this house, Chidera. I am the head of this family. If I decide Mama comes to stay with us, then that's what is going to happen. A cold silence fell between them. In the crib, baby Saporu gave a soft whimper, perhaps sensing the tension in the voices of his parents. Chidera closed her eyes for a moment, trying to steady herself. When she opened them, she felt a firmness in her own voice that surprised even her. No, she said, shaking her head. Sabinus blinked. What did you say? No, Chidera repeated, her heart thudding. She hadn't planned to outright refuse like that, but she realized she meant it. I am sorry, but I cannot agree to this. Not in the way you are proposing. We have to discuss it more, find help, or involve your sisters. I cannot be solely responsible for her care. His face contorted with anger and disbelief. They had disagreed on small things before, but she had never flat out refused him on something he had declared final. You dare to define me on this? He asked in a low, dangerous tone. Tears were streaming down her face now, but she held her ground. If caring for your mother means destroying my own health and sanity, then yes, I have to stand up for myself too. I'm sorry, but this is too much for me. Sabinus stared at her as if seeing a stranger. His jaw worked, and for a moment, she thought he might shout or even raise a hand. He looked that enraged, but instead, he took a deep breath and snatched his phone from the nightstand. Fine, he said tightly. If you won't cooperate, I'll go to Enugu myself and bring Mama here. We'll talk about this again when I return. With that, he brushed past her and walked out of the room, leaving Chidera shaking and silent. The only sound in the night were the uneven breathing of her infant son and the distant honk of a car on the street outside. She sank onto the bed, tears of frustration and fear wetting her cheeks. She had never seen Sabinu so angry, and she had never imagined a day when she would have to choose between obeying her husband and standing up for what she truly felt was right. She knew one thing though, if he was truly going to bring Mama to their home with no plan in place, she would not be able to stay and be forced into a role that would break her. Cradling her face in her hand, Chidera wept quietly. The night felt very long and very lonely. The next morning dawned grey and quiet. Normally, Chidera and Sabinus would share a few words in the morning, even on tense days. They would at least say good morning or comment on breakfast, but today, an uneasy silence hung in the air. Chidera rose early as usual. After a night of fitful sleep on the living room couch with baby Sapporo in a bassinet nearby, she had taken the baby and left the bedroom when it became clear Sabinus didn't want to talk further after their fight. In the first light of day, she moved about the kitchen, making a simple breakfast of tea and bread. Her eyes were puffy from crying, but she steeled herself. There was work to do, children to care for. When Sabinus emerged from the bedroom dressed in a t-shirt and jeans instead of his usual work attire, she realized it was Sunday. He likely wasn't going to the office today. He barely looked at her as he poured himself a cup of tea. She gathered her courage. Good morning, she said quietly. Morning, he replied curtly, not meeting her eyes. He sipped the hot tea while standing by the counter. Maya padded into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. Mama, up! The toddler mumbled, reaching her arms up to be carried. Chidera picked her up and kissed her cheek. She could feel Sabino's gaze flicker to their daughter briefly. Maya, now in her mother's arms, reached out her small hand towards her father. Dada, she said, offering him one of her little plastic bracelets as a gift. Sabinus managed a weak smile and touched Maya's cheek. Daddy is here, baby, he said softly to the child, but his eyes still didn't meet Chidera's. They stood in that uncomfortable silence for a moment longer. Finally, Chidera cleared her throat. About last night, she began. I don't want to discuss it, he interrupted, setting down the half-finished tea. I've made my arrangement to travel to Enugu tomorrow. Her heart skipped a beat. So soon? Tomorrow? You are leaving tomorrow to get Mama? He nodded, looking past her toward the window as if checking the weather. Yes, first thing in the morning, I will drive down. I can't waste time. Her condition is bad. I already called Ada and told her I'm coming. Chidera bit her lip. He was serious and not giving an inch. She felt a swell of anxiety. The thought of him actually arriving home with Mama in tow, expecting her to step into the role of caregiver, made her stomach knot. She gently set Maya down, distracting the toddler with a banana from the table. Then she turned back to her husband. Please, Sabinus, she said in a low voice, mindful of little ears nearby. Let's reconsider this. I know you want to help Mama, and so do I. But I'm barely managing here. Maybe if we planned it better, get a nurse or even someone from the village to come with her. I have considered it, he said, still not looking at her. None of the girls back home are available to come, and we can't trust just anyone with Mama's care. My sisters think she will be better off with us, and they are right. At least we can monitor her closely here. We? She repeated, unable to keep the bitterness out of her voice. Don't pretend it will be we, Sabinus. You mean me? I'll be the one monitoring and caring while you are at work all day. He inhaled sharply, frustration flickering across his face. Must we go over this again? I told you, I am the only son. I can't abandon my mother. This is fine now. There it was again, that tone of finality. Chidera felt a mixture of despair and anger. She turned away, blinking back tears. Arguing further felt pointless. He wasn't listening. Without another word, Sabinus left the kitchen. She had him making phone calls in the living room, presumably arranging his trip, maybe speaking to a colleague or checking the car's condition. It sounded like he was truly ready to drive himself, despite the long distance. They did have a modest Toyota sedan. He rarely used it for long trips, preferring public transport for anything outside the city. But it seemed he was determined to make this journey personally. Chidera cleaned up the kitchen mechanically, her mind racing. What was she going to do? He would be gone by tomorrow morning. She imagined him returning a day or two later with his ailing mother, expecting to find everything prepared for her arrival. She glanced around the small flat. If Mama came, where would everything go? The second bedroom belonged to the children. Their own bedroom could barely fit the bed and a wardrobe. The only way to accommodate a bedridden elderly woman would indeed be to give up their own bed for her. Would the four of them now crowd in the children's room or sleep on the floor? And beyond space, who would truly shoulder the day-to-day tasks? There was no escaping that it would be her. Her heart pounded with resentment at the thought that he refused to see how unfair this was. Later that morning, when Sabino stepped out briefly to check the car's tires and fuel for the journey, Chidera took the opportunity to make a phone call to her father. She carried her phone to the balcony, speaking in a hushed tone, but pouring out her worries quickly. Daddy, it's me. Yes, good morning, Daddy. Biko, please, I need your advice. Something is happening. She glanced through the open doorway to make sure Sabinus was still outside. In swift, anxious sentences, she explained the situation to Mr. Silas. How Sabinus was planning to bring his sick mother to stay, expecting her Chidera to manage the care, alongside their two very young children. Her voice shook as she recounted the argument and how he wouldn't listen to her pleas. On the other end of the line, Mr. Silas listened quietly. When she finished, he exhaled a long breath. Mwam, my child, I'm so sorry you are going through this, he said, his voice as reassuring as it had always been. You have been doing nothing wrong by speaking your mind. Taking care of a baby, a toddler, and an ailing old woman at once, even an army unit would find that difficult. He injected a hint of humor at the end, referencing his military days. Despite her worry, the hint of humor in her father's tone made the corner of her mouth lift slightly. Daddy, Sabinus doesn't understand. He thinks I'm just being uncooperative. Many men don't understand what it takes to run a home until they are forced to do it, Mr. Silas replied. Listen, Chidera, you must not let yourself be overwhelmed to the point of breaking. If he is truly going through with this without your agreement, then you have every right to protect yourself and those children. She leaned on the balcony railing, feeling the cool morning breeze on her face. What do I do, Dad? I tried to talk to him. He won't see reason. There was a brief pause, and she could imagine her father's stern, thoughtful expression. If he brings his mother and expects you alone to care for her, Mr. Silas said slowly, then pack your things, bring my grandchildren and come to my house. You hear me? Those words, spoken so decisively, sent relief and fear through her at once. Relief because it gave her a clear line of support, an option she hadn't fully considered until now. Fear because leaving her home, even temporarily, felt drastic. Daddy, leave my house. I don't want my marriage to end. It won't come to that, her father assured her. Sometimes a man needs a shock to open his eyes. You are not running away for good. You are standing your ground. I will talk sense into that husband of yours if it comes to it, but I will not allow anyone, not even him, to destroy your well-being or your future. Tears pricked her eyes again, but this time out of gratitude. Chalunam, Daddy, thank you, she whispered. Ngwanu, it will be okay, he said gently. Be strong, my daughter. You know I'm here. She hung up, feeling a little steadier. She had her father's blessings to act if needed. She prayed it wouldn't come to actually leaving. Maybe something would change. But as the day wore on, it was clear Sabinus was resolute. By nightfall, he had packed a small traveling bag. He spoke only when necessary, mostly about practical things. Where some car documents were, that he had filled the tank at his station early in the morning, that he might be gone for a night or two depending on Mama's condition. He ignored the conflict between them, as if by acting normal about logistics, he could pretend she would simply accept his plan. That night, they slept in separate rooms again. He in the bedroom, she in the children's room with both kids. Chidera hardly slept at all, her mind racing through possibilities and emotions. Each time baby Soporo woke for a feeding, she found herself both resentful of Sabino's stubbornness and worried for her mother-in-law's health. By the time the first rooster's crows signaled down outside, her eyes felt gritty and her head ached from lack of rest. She had Sabinus up and moving at first light. He left without a warm goodbye. Chidera was changing Saporo's diaper when he stuck his head into the children's room. I'm off, he said stiffly. She looked up at him, holding the wiggling baby against her shoulder. There were 1,000 things she wanted to say in that moment. Please reconsider. Safe journey. I'm sorry we fought. But his closed-off expression stopped her. Safe trip, she offered quietly. He gave a curt nod. He lingered a second, eyes shifting toward Maya, who was still asleep on a little mat on the floor. Then back at his wife. I will call when I get there, he muttered, and then he turned and left. She listened to his footsteps retreat and the soft thud of her front door closing. Through the window, she heard the car engine start, sputter a bit, then roar to life. He trod out of the compound onto the street, and then he was gone, off on his mission. Chidera sat on the edge of the bed, holding supper close to steady her own trembling. It felt as if a heavy cloud had settled over her home. She knew what she had to do. If he returned with Mama, expecting her to fall in line, she would follow through on her father's advice. She would pack what she needed and go to her father's house. It was a terrifying thought. Leaving her home, even temporarily, felt like stepping into an abyss. But she had her children to think of. She had to stay healthy and sane for them. For now, she tried to keep herself busy. The hours crawled by as she fed and bathed the kids, tidied the house compulsively, and kept glancing at her phone. True to his word, Sabinus called around midday. "I'm in Enugu," he said when she answered. "The stone, all business. I got here safely." "Thank God. How is Mama?" she asked softly, clutching the phone. "About the same, and with her dad at Mama's place." There was a pause. "We will probably set out early tomorrow morning, back to Benin, if everything goes well." Tomorrow. He was coming back tomorrow with Mama. Her throat tightened. "Okay, safe journey when you are coming back," she said, voice restrained. Another pause. Maybe he expected more from her, some sign of acceptance or warmth. But she had none to give. Finally, he just said, "All right," and then call ended. Chidera exhaled shakily. Tomorrow. She had less than a day to prepare herself for what she had to do. She mentally began listing the items she would need to pack for herself and the children. Clothes, diapers, formula, important documents, a few of Maya's favorite toys. It felt surreal to be planning her own small departure. That evening, she cooked a simple dinner of okra soup. Though her appetite was gone, she felt Maya and managed to eat a few mouthfuls herself. She couldn't shake the image of Sabinus driving for hours with his ailing mother in the car, his face set in determination. And Mama, how was the old woman managing the long trip in her condition? Worried gnawed at her for Mama's sake, even through her anger at her husband. Late at night, after putting the children to sleep, Chidera pulled out a medium-sized suitcase. She moved through the flat like a ghost, quietly folding tiny clothes and gathering necessary belongings. It was better to do it now while the kids slept. With each item she placed in the bag, the reality sank in deeper. Tomorrow, she would likely be leaving this house, at least for a while. She spotted the framed wedding photo on the dresser as she packed some of her own clothes. In the picture, she and Sabino stood beaming in traditional attire. She is in a cream-colored lace blouse and wrapper with coral beads. He is in Isiaku attire and a red Igbo cap, pride shining in his eyes. They looked so happy, so hopeful. Her chest tightened looking at the image from just 3 years ago. She never imagined they would reach a point of such conflict. "I'm doing this for us too," she whispered into the silent room, as if speaking to the people in the photo. She hoped the distance and shock would make him reconsider his approach. Maybe then they would rebuild and find a compromise. She closed the suitcase and knelt by the bed to say a prayer. With tears glistening on her cheeks, she prayed for strength, for wisdom, and for her husband to understand her heart. She prayed for Mama's health and for her children's well-being through whatever came next. Tomorrow would be a day of difficult decisions. Meanwhile, in Enugu that day, Sabinus was confronting the reality of his mother's condition. After a long drive through the night and early morning, passing the familiar sight of the Niger Bridge of Onitsha, under the first light of dawn, and then the green hills leading into Enugu, he arrived at the mother's bungalow that was his family home. Ada, the eldest of his sisters, greeted him at the door with a tired hug. Her own infant was strapped to her back with a cloth wrapper, sleeping fitfully. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy with the smell of ventilated balms and the faint scent of medicine. In the small living room, a part-time nurse, Ed, hired with contributions from all the siblings, was just packing up to leave after the night shift, giving Ada a quick report on Mama's morning. When Sabino stepped into his mother's bedroom, his heart clenched. Mama looked so small, lying there. This was the woman who had raised him, a vibrant, strong trader, who used to travel to bustling markets in Onitsha and Aba, a woman who never tired of singing Igbo gospel hymns on Sunday mornings. Now, her once plump frame was thin, her skin peppery. She stared blankly at the ceiling, lips moving as if speaking to someone unseen. Mama, I'm here, Sabino said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. Her eyes drifted to him. For a moment, there was no recognition, and his stomach dropped. Then a spark of clarity appeared in her eyes. Sabinus, she whispered, voice raspy. Yes, Mama, it's me, he replied, taking her frail hand gently. It was warm but trembling. She managed a weak smile. My son, you came. Of course I came, he choked out, fighting the burn of tears. He hadn't realized until that moment how afraid he had been of losing her. He brushed a thin lock of grey hair away from her forehead. You will be fine, Mama. I'm going to take you with me to Benin City, okay? We'll take care of you there. Mama only nodded slightly. She closed her eyes, either from relief or exhaustion. He sat there for a while holding her hand, feeling a mix of love and guilt twist inside him. Guilt for being far away, guilt that his sisters had borne the brunt of caring for Mama up until now. Outside the bedroom, he found Ada in the kitchen, warming some pap, corn porridge on a kerosene stove. His sister's face was drawn with exhaustion. As the eldest daughter, Ada had taken on much of the caregiving after Mama's stroke. How was the journey? Ada asked quietly, stirring the pot. Fine. Long, he answered. He hesitated, then added sincerely, Thank you for all you have been doing for Mama. Ada turned off the stove and wiped her hands on a towel. She's our mother, she said simply, but he could hear the strain in her voice. It hasn't been easy, Sabi, especially since I had the baby. He nodded, shame creeping into his face. I know. That's why I want to take her with me. At least I can. Ada gave him a sharp look. Can what? You're hardly at home, brother. It will be Chidera doing everything. No. Sabino stiffened, not expecting the critic. Ada had always been straightforward. Chidera will manage. I mean, she's at home. Ada shook her head, looking slightly angry. You men think it's so simple. Do you know how many times I have barely slept because Mama was calling out or needed changing in the middle of the night, while I'm also nursing my own child? I'm beyond exhausted. If not that my husband's mother is around helping with my kids, I would have broken down by now. He looked at his sister, the dark circles under her eyes, the tension in her shoulders, and he had no response. She was leaving what was about to thrust upon his own wife, and clearly, it was pushing her to the brink. Ada, I'll figure something out, he said, though the word felt hollow even to him. His sister just sighed. I'm not saying don't take her, she murmured. Honestly, maybe you should, even if it's just for a short while, to give us a break. But please think about hiring someone, or even part-time. Mama needs help around the clock. Sabino swallowed and gave a tight nod. Money was a bit tight. Between his kids and occasionally sending support home, he wasn't sure how they could afford a nurse long-term. But hearing Ada, he silently resolved to trying to find a way, at least eventually. For now, the plan remained. Take Mama to Benin City, where at least he and his wife could supervise her care. They left Enugu the next morning, as he had told Chidera on the phone. Ada and their older sister, Ifoma, helped bundle Mama into the back seat of the car, cushioning her with pillows for the journey. Mama was lucid enough to ask after my grandchildren and Nechidera, the affectionate term she used for her daughter-in-law, which only made Sabino's chest tighten further. He answered that the kids were fine and that Chidera was excited to see her, forcing a smile. He didn't dare reveal the turmoil waiting at home. As he drove through the early hours, leaving the green hills of Enugu behind, Sabinus tried to focus on the road and not on the dread creeping into his heart. Part of him was still angry at Chidera's defiance, but another part, the part that had seen Ada's exhaustion and felt his own helplessness tending to Mama overnight, was growing worried. How would they cope? Would his wife even be there when he arrived? He shook off the thought. Surely she wouldn't just leave. She was upset, yes, but she wouldn't abandon him, would she? He pressed down on the accelerator, urging the car faster toward home. Late that afternoon, the sound of a car engine outside signaled Sabinus' return to the flat of Benin City. He parked and climbed out, stretching his aching back from the long drive. Dust from the road clung to the car's tires and the hem of his trousers. He hurried around to help his mother. Mama was awake but disoriented from the journey, mumbling something about needing the bathroom. "Hold on, Mama. We are home now," he said, trying to sound cheerful. He looked toward the apartment entrance expectantly, half hoping to see his wife appear at the doorway with a welcoming smile or at least readiness to help. But the doorway was empty. His neighbor, a young lady named Efe, who lived in the flat across the hall, was standing outside, apparently waiting. In her hand were a set of keys. "Good afternoon, Brother Sabinus," Efe greeted nervously, using the common friendly term brother for a neighbor. She glanced at the frail older woman leaning in the car. "Welcome, good afternoon, Ma," she added politely to the mama. Mama gave a vague smile, not fully comprehending. "Thank you, Efe," Sabinus said with a quick nod. He was distracted, eyes scanning around. "Have you seen my wife? Is she inside?" Efe bit her lip. She asked me to give you this." She stepped forward and placed the house keys in his hand. "She left this morning with the children. She said to tell you she went to her father's house." The young woman's word tumbled out quietly. Sabinus felt the blood drain from his face. He stared at Efe, hoping he had misheard. "She left with the kids?" Efe nodded, sympathy in her eyes. "Yes, she left a few hours ago. I'm sorry. That's what she told me." She looked upset. For a moment, Sabinus stood rooted to the spot, the keys cold in his palm. Chidera had actually done it. She had left. The shock of it made his mind spin. A weak voice came from inside the car. "Mom, where are we?" It was Mama calling him. "This is not our house in Enugu." Her confusion snapped him out of his daze. He had an immediate situation to handle. His ill mother needed to be settled inside. "Thank you, Efe," he mumbled to the neighbor. He pocketed the keys and moved to unstrap Mama's seatbelt. With some effort, he helped the frail woman out of the car. Mama leaned on him heavily, her legs shaking after the long ride. Efe rushed over. "Let me help." Together, the neighbor and Sabinus half supported, half carried Mama up the short flight of stairs to the apartment. Sabinus fumbled with the key in the lock, hands trembling from a mix of anger, embarrassment, and worry. Inside the flat was airy quiet. They eased Mama down onto the sofa in the living room. The older woman looked around, blinking. "Where is everybody? Where are my grandchildren?" she asked in a quavering voice. Sabinus forced a reassuring tone. "They went to visit Chidera's father for a bit, Mama. Don't worry, they will be back." He wasn't sure if Mama absorbed the answer. She was already gazing absently at a spot on the wall. "Brother Sabinus, should I get her some water?" Efe asked quietly. He nodded. "Yes, please. There are clean cups in the kitchen cabinet." As Efe went to fetch water, he took a moment to catch his breath. His heart was hammering. The apartment felt different, almost hollow. A quick glance around told him what was missing. The stroller was gone, along with the large diaper bag that usually hung on a peg by the door. Some of the children's toys were missing from the usual pile in the corner, and a couple of suitcases that usually sat on the top of the wardrobe were also not in sight. It hit him fully. She really had packed up and left. Efe returned with a cup of water. Sabinus helped his mother sip slowly. He could barely think straight, but he managed to thank the neighbor for her help and politely usher her out, saying he could handle it from here. Efe cast one more worried look at him before retreating. The moment she was gone, Sabinus sank onto the chair opposite his mother, head in his hands. The silence roared in his ears. He had expected a confrontation, maybe more arguing, perhaps cold indifference from Chidera, but not an empty house. Mama shifted on the couch, muttering, "I need to lie down." Right. He had to sort his mother out first, emotions rolling. He got up and gently guided Mama to the bedroom. His and Chidera's bedroom. It was still relatively neat, but he noticed drawers left half open and some clothes missing. evidence of his wife's hurried packing. He tried not to think about it. He helped Mama onto the bed. She was exhausted and sank into the mattress with a weary sigh. As he removed her shoes, he noticed a dampness. She had wet herself slightly during the trip without mentioning it. A wave of pity and stress washed over him. This was already harder than he had imagined. "Rest, Mama," he said softly. "I will bring you something to eat soon." She mumbled a thank you, eyes already closing in weariness. Back in the living room, Sabinus finally pulled out his phone with trembling fingers and dialed his wife. It rang and rang. He paced the room, stepping over a stray piece of Maya's puzzle on the floor, each unanswered ring filling his anger anew. How could she do this? How dare she? At last she picked up. "Hello." Her voice was quiet, weary. His temper, held in check until now by shock and duty, exploded. "Chidera!" He backed into the phone. "What nonsense is this? Where are you? How can you leave the house like that? You better come back here now." On the other end, Chidera closed her eyes at the sound of his shouting. She was sitting in her father's living room. The kids were napping in the guest room, and her father was nearby, watching her with concern. She had known this call would come, but her heart still jumped at his harsh tone. "Sabinus, she began, voice shaking. He didn't let her finish. "You left me with Mama. You there?" he shouted. His voice was loud enough that Mama stirred in the bedroom, and he had to lower it. But the venom was there. "Come back to this house this minute. You hear me? If you don't come back, consider this marriage over." Chidera felt her heart was being squeezed. He was still trying to bully her, even now. Before she could gather her words to respond, another voice cut into the call. "Ogini, what did you just say to her?" A deep commanding voice boomed. Mr. Silas had taken the phone from his daughter's hand. Sabinus was taken aback to suddenly hear his father-in-law. "Sir, he stammered, his anger faltering. "I heard you telling my daughter her marriage is over if she doesn't obey you," Mr. Silas said, voice start with anger. He was barely restraining. "Now, you listen to me, Sabinus." His tone was dangerously calm. "I did not give you my daughter for you to treat her as a slave or to threaten her life." Sabinus opened his mouth, but no words came. His free hand clenched at his side. He had always been a little intimidated by ex-soldiers, and hearing that icy fury now made him feel like a recruit being dressed down by a drill instructor. "Chidera is a wife, not a house girl," Mr. Silas continued. "She has given you beautiful children and cares for your home day and night. And you think you can heap more burden on her until she breaks? Sophia!" He clicked his tongue in disgust. "Shame on you, son." I only wanted to take care of my mother, sir," Sabinus managed to say, but his voice lacked conviction now. "By making my daughter do it alone? When you have other siblings who could help, and you yourself won't even be around during the day." The older man's voice rose, each word laced with indignation. "If your mother needs care, you take care of her yourself or find a proper solution. You do not destroy my daughter's future in the process. Let me tell you, if anything happens to my daughter because of stress or mistreatment, you will have me to answer to." Sabinus' face burned with shame. He felt like a boy being scolded, but worse, because deep down, he knew Mr. Silas was right. "Sir, I'm sorry," he said weakly. Mr. Silas gave a short, disapproving hum. "You will be truly sorry if you don't fix this. Now, you hear me well. I have my daughter and my grandchildren here with me. They are safe. Focus on taking care of your mother and think deeply about how you got to this point. When and only when you are ready to act like a responsible husband and father, you can come and talk. But if I ever hear you threaten my daughter ever again, that day will be the last you will speak to her. Understood?" Each word landed like a hammer. Sabinus swallowed hard. "Yes, sir," he whispered. "Good. Now go and attend to your mother, son." With that, the line disconnected with a decisive click. Sabinus lowered the phone slowly. For a long moment, he stood in the silent living room, the weight of his father-in-law's words pressing down on him. He was totally dumbfounded, as if someone had knocked the wind out of him. Never in his life had he been spoken to like that, but then never had he driven his wife to such an extreme before. A faint sound caught his attention. Mama calling his name from the bedroom, perhaps confused or needing something. He realized he still had a duty right in front of him at that moment. Sliding his phone into his pocket, Sabinus rubbed a hand over his face. He felt the sting of humiliation, the burn of lingering anger, though now much of it was directed at himself, and a rising panic about what to do next. First things first, he had to care for Mama at least for tonight, and he had to do it alone. That night was one of the longest in Sabinus' life. Alone in the small flat with his incapacitated mother, he quickly realized how unprepared he was. Around 8 p.m., Mama weakly said he was hungry. Chidera usually left him dinner or at least something easy to warm up, but with her gone, he was at a loss. He found a pot of cold okra soup in the fridge, likely what his wife had cooked the previous day. Grateful, he reheated it and fumbled about making a simple meal of gari, cassava flakes, to go with it. His inexperience showed as he made the gari too thick and lumpy, but it would have to do. He brought a tray to the bedroom, helping Mama sit up against the headboard. She was murmuring in Igbo about someone named Onyeka, a name he vaguely recognized as one of her childhood friends. Clearly, her mind was drifting through old memories. "Food is coming, Mama," he announced gently in Igbo, trying to get her attention. He sat by her and began feeding her small bites of softened eba and soup. She ate a few spoonfuls, then turned away, saying she was full. Most of the food remained untouched, but he couldn't force her. After laying her back down, he realized she needed to use the bathroom. Actually, by the smell she already had. With a mix of dread and determination, Sabinus steeled himself for the task. His mother had soiled herself on the bed. This was territory he had never navigated before, not even with his own infant. He had deftly avoided diaper duty, always leaving that to his wife. Now here he was, confronted with a mess and a helpless mother who looked apologetic through her confusion. "It's okay, Mama," he said softly, though inside he was reeling. He fetched a bucket of water and an old towel and carefully cleaned his mother as best as he could, averting his eyes respectfully as tears pricked at the corner of his eyes. She was mostly silent except for a few incoherent mumbles. He felt a crushing sorrow seeing her this way, mixed with a rising panic at his own helplessness. Once Mama was cleaned and changed into a fresh nightgown, he found some in the bag his sisters had sent along. Sabinus striped the soiled bedsheet. He realized he had no idea how to operate the small washing machine, since laundry was something Chidera always handled. With no electricity at the moment, the power had gone out as it often did at night. They resorted to rinsing the sheet by hand in the bathroom, scrubbing it with bar soap under the beam of a flashlight. After wringing it out awkwardly, he hung the sheet over the shower rod. He spread an old wrapper on the bare mattress and carefully led Mama back down. She seemed out of energy and quickly fell into a fitful sleep. Sweating and exhausted, Sabinus collapsed on the living room couch. The house was dark and quiet. In the silence, memories flooded him. He remembered coming home from work just a few days ago to a house filled with the sounds of his children's laughter, the aroma of Chidera's cooking, and his wife's gentle presence. He had taken it all for granted. Now the emptiness was palpable. He picked up his phone multiple times, wanting to call or message his wife. He typed out one message. "I'm sorry for shouting. I'm overwhelmed. Please, Chidera, I need you. Mama needs you. I can't do this alone." But he deleted it before sending. Would she even read it? Would she care? Pride and remorse swelled within him. Eventually, past midnight, he succumbed to a restless sleep on the couch, the phone still clutched in his hand. At her father's house that same night was a different kind of struggle for Chidera. Though physically more comfortable with her father helping rock baby Sapporo to sleep, and little Maya curled up beside her. Her mind refused to rest. She worried about Sabinus and Mama. She had always been the one to care for others, and imagining them struggling tugged at her heart. She had to constantly remind herself why she had taken this stand in the first place, because she could not pour from an empty cup, and her husband had pushed her to the brink. Early the next morning, as sunlight peeked through the curtains, Chidera woke to find her father already up. Mr. Silas, ever the soldier, rose with dawn, making tea and frying a pan of eggs. The rich scent of the eggs and onions filled the air. "Good morning, Daddy," she greeted softly, tying a wrap around her rumpled night dress. "Good morning, my dear. I made some breakfast. Come eat," he said. She managed a small smile and sat at the table. As he served her a cup of tea, she noticed he had already fed Maya, who was now playing with a worn teddy bear on the floor. Her toddler seemed content enough in Grandpa's house, thankfully. While they ate, her father asked gently, "How are you feeling, my dear?" Chidera shrugged, stirring her tea. "I don't know. I feel relieved to be here, but I also feel guilty." "Guilty?" "Yes, for leaving him to cope alone, Dad," she admitted. "I keep worrying if Mama is okay, if he's okay, but I had no choice, Daddy." He wasn't listening. I felt I was drowning. Mr. Silas reached over and squeezed her hand. "You did what you had to do. Don't feel guilty for taking care of yourself and your children. If he had been reasonable, it wouldn't have come to this." She nodded, sighing. I hope he learns from this. I love him, Daddy. I want us to be okay. But I also need him to respect me, to value what I do." Her father gave a reassuring smile. "He will learn by God's grace. Sometimes men learn lessons the hard way. And I know you love him. This isn't about lack of love. It's about understanding." Just then, her phone buzzed on the table, jolting both of them. Chidera's heart jumped. She thought it might be a message from Sabinus, but the screen showed her sister-in-law's name, Nkechi, Sabinus' sister. She exchanged a glance with her father and hesitantly answered, putting it on speaker since she was holding baby Sapporo at her breast, nursing him. "Hello," she said carefully. The voice that came through was harsh. "So, you really did it, Chidera? You abandoned my mother and my brother, eh? What kind of woman are you?" Chidera felt as if she had been slapped. Nkechi, the youngest of Sabinus' sister, wasn't in a mood to listen. She continued, her tone slicing through the air. "Do you know Mama is sick? And you left her at that house. My brother told us you refused to help. Aren't you ashamed? After everything, you are sitting comfortably at your father's house, eh? You want to kill our mother by stressing my brother to death?" Tears sprang to Chidera's eyes. She had expected anger from his family, but the words still stung deeply. Before she could try to defend herself, her father had had enough. He gently took the phone from her hand and spoke in a loud, firm voice. "And who is this?" he demanded. The line went silent at the unexpected male voice. Then Nkechi replied, still brimming with anger. "It's me, Sabino's sister. And who are you?" "I am Silas Okafor, Chidera's father," he stated firmly. "Young woman, I will only ask you once to mind how you speak. You are calling my phone now, not hers." Nkechi was taken aback, but plowed on. "Sir, with all due respect, your daughter is doing something very wrong. She has left her husband and even refuses to care for her husband's mother." Mr. Silas cut in, voice like thunder. "My daughter has done nothing wrong. The wrong is from your brother who thinks someone else's daughter should slave for him and do the duties you, his sisters, should be doing for your own mother." Nkechi gasped audibly. "Excuse me. We never asked her to slave." "Listen to me," he interrupted, not letting her finish. "That woman you are talking about is your mother. If you, her daughter, can't leave your own mother to care for her full time, how dare you expect my daughter, who has 2 babies, to do it without question. On the other end, Nkechi sputtered. We are taking care of Mama. That's why brother took her, because we needed more help. Exactly, Mr. Silas said sharply. You needed help. And instead of any of you stepping up more or pulling resources to hire a nurse, you all thought it best to dump everything on my child, as if her life and health have no value. Who is really the wicked one here? My daughter, who has cared for her husband and children every day, or you people who want to add more to her body while you stay in your own homes? There was a stunned silence. Chidera could imagine her sister-in-law's face, lost for words. Nkechi regained a bit of composure and muttered, Mr. Silas, it's not like that. But she should have discussed with us, not just run away. My daughter tried to discuss with your brother. He gave her no choice, Mr. Silas said sternly. Now, she is under my protection until your family sorts itself out. If you have any further complaint, you know where to find me. But do not call to insult her again. We will resolve this as a family, not by trading words on phone calls or WhatsApp. At the mention of WhatsApp, Nkechi fell silent. Clearly, the family group chat had been active with the drama. Instead of continuing the argument, which she realized she was badly losing, she opted to end the call. Fine then, I have said my piece. And with that, the line went dead. Chidera let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Her father handed the phone back to her. She felt shaky but also vindicated. Thank you, Daddy, she said softly. He simply nodded, his expression still bristling with protective anger. People must learn not to take orders for granted, he said, patting her shoulder. Sure enough, that day, the WhatsApp family group, in which Chidera was included, a chat with Sabino's siblings and a few relatives, became a battleground. Nkechi had already posted a long rant about the call. Messages flew back and forth. Some relatives scolded Chidera without knowing her side. Others pleaded for calm and advised the matter to resolve privately. Chidera forced herself not to engage at all. Instead, she focused on caring for her children and staying calm. She did notice one message from Ada, the elder sister, telling everyone to stop the public fight and promising that we will handle it. That gave Chidera a small measure of comfort, at least, and that seemed more understanding, likely because Ada herself knew firsthand how heavy caring for Mama could be. Back at his apartment, Sabinus was reaching his own breaking point. The second day of caring for Mama had been as challenging as the first. He had attempted to bath her in the morning and ended up nearly flooding the bathroom. He burnt the yam he tried to boil for her breakfast, and Mama, in a moment of clarity, softly asked, "Where is Chidera? She cooks better," which felt like salt in his wound. When Mama napped, he tried calling his wife again. This time, he didn't shout. As the phone rang, he rehearsed what to say if she answered. Maybe start with an apology, maybe just beg, but she didn't pick up. Desperate, left a voice message instead. "Nne, please," he said, voice cracking, using the Igbo endowment for a wife. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please, I can't do this. I need you. I know you want me. Just come back and we'll find another way. I beg you." No reply came, and he couldn't blame her for the silence. He felt more alone than ever. Even the apartment itself seemed to rebel against him. Power had been out since noon, and the fridge was warming up, threatening to spoil the little food left. He prayed silently for NEPA to restore electricity, partly for Mama's comfort under the fan, partly so he could charge his dying phone. But late afternoon of that second day, Sabinus knew something had to change. The situation was unsustainable. His mother's presence in Benin was clearly not working out like this. He was exhausted. Mama wasn't getting the best care, and his mind was in shambles over his fractured marriage. Finally, swallowing what remained of his pride, he called Ada in Enugu. In a strained voice, he explained that he couldn't manage, that he needed one of them to take Mama back or help find a solution. Ada's voice was gentle. Perhaps she had heard about all that happened from the group chat. She simply said, "It's okay, you tried. Bring Mama back, we'll figure out another arrangement." So he made the difficult decision. He would take Mama to Ada's house in Enugu the next morning, Ada even offered to meet him halfway in Asaba to shorten the drive, which he appreciated with relief. The next day, in the evening, he called Chidera once more. To his surprise, she answered this time, though she remained quiet on the line except for a soft "I'm here" to let him know she was listening. I have taken Mama to stay with Ada, he said gently, feeling both relief and shame. In truth, he had just returned after handing Mama over to his sister earlier that day. I'm back home now alone. He paused, swallowing the lump in his throat. Please come home, please. I'm sorry for everything. We can talk, or even if you don't want to talk now, just I need you and the kids here. The house is so empty without you. There was a long silence. He thought the call might have dropped until he heard the faint sound of her breathing. But the only response he got was a quiet click as she hung up. He stared at his phone, despair flooding him. He feared he had lost his family for good. When he messaged Ada later that night to confirm he had returned safely and Mama was settled, his sister responded with a short note. Now go and make things right with your wife. Sabinus knew what he had to do. The very thought of it made his stomach twist with nerves, but it was the only way. If humbling himself before his in-laws was what it took to repair this damage, then so be it. As dusk turned to night, he prepared for the next big step, to formally apologize and bring his wife and children back home. The next evening, as the sun dipped low and cast an orange glow over Benin City's skyline, Sabinus found himself standing nervously outside the gate of Mr. Silas Okafor's residence. In one hand, he clutched a bottle of red wine, and in the other, a small bag containing some fruits and bread he had hastily purchased as a token of respect. His heart hammered in his chest. He wiped sweaty palms on his trousers and cleared his throat before knocking on the gate. It was Mr. Silas himself who opened it. Having spotted Sabinus through the window, the older man stood tall, back straight as a plank despite his years. In the fading light, his expression was unreadable. Good evening, sir, Sabinus greeted, his voice strained but polite. Mr. Silas regarded his son-in-law silently for a moment, then gave a small nod. Evening, come in. Sabinus stepped into the compound. The house was modest but well kept, with a small garden out front. He had been here only a handful of times, mostly when he and his people came for the traditional marriage rite. Memories of that day flooded back, him kneeling to offer a cup of palm wine to a smiling, blushing Chidera in front of both families. Now, here he was again, essentially to beg for his wife back. They entered the living room. Chidera was seated on the sofa, and at the sight of her, Sabinus felt a lump in his throat. She looked tired and anxious, her eyes a bit red as if she had been crying. On the carpet, little Maya was playing with building blocks, and baby Sopuru slept peacefully in a portable cot nearby. As Sabinus walked in, Maya was the first to react. The toddler looked up, recognizing her father, and squealed, "Daddy!" She toddled over on her short legs and clung to his knees. He knelt down to scoop her into his arms, hugging her tightly. "My princess, Daddy missed you," he whispered, his voice catching. Maya giggled, oblivious to the tension among the adults, happy just to be held by her father. Chidera watched the scene with a mix of relief and sadness. She had missed him too, more than she would admit aloud, but she kept her face composed, unsure what he would say or do. Mr. Silas cleared his throat pointedly, prompting Sabinus to remember his purpose. Sabinus gently set Maya down, and she tottered back to her blocks. He then placed the wine and the grocery bag on the center table. Taking a deep breath, he lowered himself to his knees in front of his father-in-law, then turned to face his wife as well. "Sir, Chidera," he began, finding it difficult to meet their eyes. I'm here to apologize." He placed both palms on the floor in a pleading gesture and continued. "I'm deeply sorry for the way I behaved and the things I said. I was wrong. I disrespected you, sir, and I treated you, Chidera, very badly. You are right to stand up for yourself." Chidera's eyes filled with tears as she watched her proud husband kneeling and apologizing. It was something she never expected to see. and it moved her, even as the hurt still lingered. Mr. Silas remained silent, arms folded across his chest, letting the young man speak. I acted selfishly, Sabinus went on. I thought only of my mother and myself, and not what it would cost my wife. I took you for granted, Chidera. I assumed you could handle anything without complaint, and I was wrong. I threatened our marriage, which I had no right to do. Please forgive me, my wife. The room was quiet except for the soft babbling of Maya as she stacked her blocks. Sabinus dared to look up at his wife. Chidera, he addressed her directly, voice quavering. I'm so sorry, my love. I never wanted to hurt you. I realize now how much you do, and how I should never have tried to force you into something like that. I promise I will never treat you that way again. Please come back home. I will do whatever it takes to make things right. Tears slid down Chidera's cheeks. She stood and moved closer, motioning for him to rise from the floor. Sabinus, Her voice broke, and she took a moment to steady herself. I forgive you. He stood up slowly, a sheen of relief in his eyes at those words. He wanted to embrace her but held back, unsure if it was welcome yet. I'm sorry too, Chidera continued softly, for living like I did. Without telling you properly, I was at my limit and afraid. I felt I had to protect myself and the children. No, you don't owe me an apology, he insisted, shaking his head. You did what was necessary. I drove you to do it. Mr. Silas finally stepped forward. Well, he said, his tone gentler now. I'm glad to hear this understanding, but there are things that needed to be said. Both Sabinus and Chidera turned to him respectfully. The old soldier fixed his gaze on Sabinus. My son, marriage is a partnership. You see these children? He gestured toward Maya and the baby. They need both of you. And to have both parents, the parents must take care of each other too. Yes, sir, Sabinus agreed quietly. You are trying to fulfill your duty as a son, which is commendable, Mr. Silas continued. I cannot fault you for wanting to care for your mother, but you cannot do that by sacrificing your wife. A good man finds balance and asks for help when needed. You had other options, your sisters, hired help, yet you placed all that burden on your wife without considering her well-being. That was wrong. Sabinus nodded, tears of shame gathering in his eyes. I understand. I truly do now. Mr. Silas then looked at his daughter. Chidera, you have shown strength and wisdom, but remember that communication is key. Leaving the house was a drastic step, albeit one I supported because of the circumstances. In the future, both of you must sit and talk things through honestly before it gets to a breaking point. Understood? Yes, Daddy, she replied. He smiled faintly. Good. You are both young and have a lot to learn. But let this be a lesson that mutual respect is non-negotiable in a marriage. Turning back to Sabinus, he added, I trust you will uphold your promise. Do not make me regret sending my daughter back to you. Sabinus straightened, wiping his eyes with the back of his palm. I promise, sir, I will never let this happen again. I will respect you and I will listen to her. There was a palpable release of tension in the air after that. Mr. Silas' stern expression finally softened into something kind. All right, that's enough kneeling and crying, he said gruffly. Though, there was warmth in his eyes now. Come, let's sit. I believe you brought wine, eh? A hint of a smile appeared on Sabinus' face as he quickly moved to pick up the bottle. Yes, sir. They spent a little while longer in that living room, sharing the bread and fruit and pouring small glasses of sweet red wine. It wasn't an elaborate feast, but it symbolized peace. Maya clapped her hands to join in the party. Though she only got a cup of juice, even baby Sopolo woke up and gave a gurgling laugh as his mother cradled him in her lap. Cautiously, laughter returned to the conversation. Mr. Silas even recounted a brief amusing story of a fellow soldier who once had kitchen duty and burned all the food. comparing it to how he imagined Sabinus might have struggled while alone. They all chuckled at that, even Sabinus, who blushed and admitted he had barely managed to boil yam without nearly burning it. The small dose of humor eased the remnants of strain among them. As the hour grew late, Mr. Silas offered that they stay the night and drive home in the morning, to which Sabinus readily agreed. He was emotionally drained, and driving at night with the little ones wasn't wise. Before they all turned in, Sabinus sat on the edge of the bed in the guest room where Chidera would sleep with the children, while he took the couch out of respect in her father's house. He held Chidera's hand gently. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" she asked softly, brows knitting in mild confusion. "For giving me another chance, for forgiving me." She looked at him, and in the dim light, he could see love in her eyes alongside the hurt that was now beginning to heal. "We are family," she replied. "I did what I had to do for us. I'm just glad you understand now." He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it. "I promise I will do better. You and the kids, you are my world. I lost sight of that, thinking I was doing the right thing for Mama. But I know now that I can't be a good son by being a bad husband and father." Chidera gave a tiny smile and squeezed his hand. "And I promise to always speak up and tell you how I feel, maybe without running off next time," she added with a soft chuckle. He managed a quiet laugh too. "Deal." With that gentle accord, they bade each other good night. For the first time in days, both slept peacefully, knowing they would face the future together again. The next morning, the family of four prepared to return home. Mr. Silas helped carry their bags to the car. Before they got in, he put Sabinus aside for one last word. "Remember, my son," he said, placing a hand on the younger man's shoulder. "Treat her well. Don't forget what you learned this week." "I won't forget, sir," Sabinus vowed. Then, the grandfather turned to his daughter and grandchildren, gathering them in a warm embrace. "If there is any trouble, you know my door is always open," he reminded Chidera softly. "I know, Daddy. Thank you for everything," she whispered, hugging him tightly. With farewell said, Sabinus started the car and headed out of Mr. Silas's compound. As they drove off, both he and Chidera waved at the tall figure of her father standing at the gate, watching protectively until they were down the street. The drive back to their flat felt different from the tense, silent drives of the past week. There was a sense of hope and renewal. Maya dozed off in her car seat, and baby Sopuru coiled quietly. At one point, Sabinus glanced at his wife beside him. "I was thinking," he said, breaking a comfortable silence. "Maybe we could look into hiring some help at home. Not full-time if we can't afford it yet, but maybe someone to come in a few times a week to assist you. Or, if you want, we can even talk about you going back to work and finding a nanny. I realize now how much you gave up." Chidera looked at him in surprise. This was unexpected and welcome. "Let's settle in first," she replied, smiling. "But yes, let's discuss it. Thank you." He reached over and gently squeezed her hand on the jet stick. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes of a new understanding between them. When they arrived at the flat, the first thing that hit them was a faint smell of stale food. The remnants of the meals and chaos from the previous days. Sabinus clinched. "Sorry about the mess," he said sheepishly. "I wasn't in the best state." Inside, a pile of unwashed plates sat on the sink, and the living room still had the disarray of scattered toys and a blanket on the couch. Immediately, out of habit, Chidera moved to start tidying, but Sabinus gently caught her arm. "No, please. You go rest or tend to the kids. Let me handle this." She raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" He nodded firmly. "Yes, I mean it." True to his word, Sabinus rolled up his sleeves and spent the next hour cleaning the house. He washed the dishes, took out the trash, and even attempted to mop the floor. After calling Efe the neighbor for a quick pointer on how to ring the mop properly, something he had never done before, Chidera, sitting on the sofa and nursing baby Soporo, watched him with a mixture of astonishment and affectionate amusement. It was a sight she never thought she would see. Her husband cheerfully sweating over housework without being asked. Maya followed him around excitedly, thinking it was a new game that Daddy was doing mommy's work. From that day on, things changed for the better in the household. Sabinus Having experienced firsthand the weight of domestic and caregiving labor, became far more appreciative and involved. He started doing small tasks like rinsing his own dishes after meals and occasionally cooking a simple breakfast on weekends, though his culinary skills remained a work in progress, often resulting in playful teasing from Chidera. More importantly, he consulted his wife on any big family decisions now, treating her as an equal partner. They also kept true to their commitment regarding Mama's care. After a frank discussion with his sisters, it was agreed that Mama would rotate between Ada's home in Enugu and their second sister's Ifeoma's place in Owerri, where professional home care nurses were available in both cities. In fact, it was Chidera who suggested and even helped find a qualified nurse in Ada's neighborhood, volunteering to contribute part of the nurse's salary from their own savings. This generous gesture melted away any lingering resentment from the siblings. Every other weekend or so, Sabinus and Chidera would take the kids to visit Mama. If Mama was staying with Ada in Enugu, they would send gifts and arrange video calls with the help of Ada's phone, since the trip was long. If Mama was at Ifeoma's in Owerri, they sometimes made the drive, stopping by Mr. Silas's house in Benin for a rest and to drop off Maya, who loved extra time with Grandpa before continuing to Owerri with baby Soporo. Each time, Mama would grasp Chidera's hands and say, "Mwam, Talo, my child, thank you for the things she brought and for finding the nurse who cared for her." Mama never fully understood the drama that had transpired, and that was just as well. In her clearer moments, she simply saw all her children, daughters and daughter-in-law coming together to care for her. One breezy Saturday morning, the family sat together in their living room. Saminus was on the floor with Maya, helping her build an ambitious tower of blocks. Chidera sat on the sofa, bouncing Soporo on her lap as the baby goggled happily. The smell of akara bean cakes they had fried for breakfast still hung pleasantly in the air. Maya clapped her hands as her block tower stood tall without toppling. "Mommy, look!" she called out excitedly. "Wow, that's amazing, my dear," Chidera praised. Suddenly, the tower did wobble and crash, scattering blocks everywhere. Maya's eyes went wide, looking to her parents for a reaction. Before she could decide whether to laugh or cry, Sabinus flopped over dramatically on the floor, pretending to be hit by the flying blocks. "Oh no, I'm under attack!" he cried out playfully. Maya broke into laughter at her father's silly antics. Even baby Soporo squidled in the light, flaring his little arms. Chidera laughed along with them. It was a beautiful sound, one that filled Sabinus' heart with gratitude. He sat up and caught his wife's eye. "I love you," he mounted silently so that only she could see. She mounted back, "I love you too." And in her smile, he saw not just love, but trust had won and cherished. The story was not a fairy tale with a perfect ending, but a real living marriage with its ups and downs. They knew there would be more challenges ahead, as with any family. Yet, with the lessons learned and mutual respect regained, Chidera and Sabinus were ready to face whatever came next side by side. And never again would Sabinus allow his pride or stubbornness to hurt the woman who was the heart of his home. In the end, they both understood the truth of Igbo's saying Mr. Salas shared in parting. A home is sweet when husband and wife are at peace. At peace they were, and so was their home. A peaceful home is built on respect, honest truth, and shared responsibility. Love is not control. It listens, plans, and protects each other's dignity. When a problem comes, like caring for an elderly parent, the whole family should carry it together, not dump it on one person. Setting firm but fair boundaries is not wickedness. It's wisdom that keeps a mother, a wife, and a child safe. And when we fail, humility and apology can open the door to forgiveness and a better way forward. Thank you so much for watching this amazing story about Sabinus and Chidera on African Stories by V. If you liked it and felt inspired with their journey, please show your support by clicking the like button, sharing with your friends, and leaving a comment below. To see more interesting stories and learn about different cultures, subscribe to African Stories by V, and do not forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support means a lot and helps us bring more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.